So you're having trouble color grading sunrise and sunset. Let's work on it. So right here, I have a bunch of images. As you can see, we do have a bunch of sunset ones, a bunch of sunrise ones, a beautiful sunset like this one. But today we're gonna be focusing on this one right here, which is coincidentally the cover of my book. You can imagine that I meticulously try to make it as scientifically correct as possible. So I'm gonna show you how I did it. So this is basically my note tree. As you can see, it's quite complicated, but I can assure you I did not use every single node because you don't have to. This is just my setup. And by the way, I really want to emphasize the fact that DaVinci Resolve is just a tool for you to achieve your outcome. The tool is not the point here. The point here is that you have the knowledge, that you know what you want to do, that you know what colors you want to see on your final image. So this is my image. This was taken from a drone. This was taken on an extremely cheap drone, by the way, which doesn't even have D-Log. And still, I was able to pull out a bunch of colors from this one and make it look really nice. Good enough from a video clip to be screen grabbed and then put onto a book cover. That's crazy. This is the gradient of the entire image. So these are basically the colors. I scientifically pulled it for you guys to see. What is your first impression of these colors? As I said in the previous video, there are 5 key elements that you should keep in mind every single time you're doing any sort of coloring work. And those are color properties, color relationships, color contrast, color perception, and color application. What you see right here is closely tied in with color relationships because we're looking at color harmony here. And what kind of color harmony are we looking at? Are we looking at a complementary color harmony? Are we looking at an analogous one? Are we looking at a triadic or a tetradic one? No, we're looking at a monochromatic color harmony. And this is really important. So as you can see on my vector scope, this basically proves everything that you have to know. So if you're looking at like DaVinci Resolve, color grading tutorials, many people like to tell you that you have to have, insanely big color contrast in a sense that your vector scope has to almost contain an equal amount of blues, cool colors, as they do contain warm colors. You have to have this like huge separation of colors. But obviously this is just one piece of the puzzle. This is complementary color harmony, but this is not every single image. Listen, not every single image has to have complementary colors. Not every single image has to have cool shadows and warm highlights. This is just not how it works. And this is where color science and color theory comes in. Because truly, when you're standing before a sunrise, do you see any blues? Because I don't. All I see is this glowing warm sunlight shining through the entire world, obviously from my perspective. So what's actually going to happen when I start introducing blues into my shadows? Let's take a look. So all I really did right here is I just made a selection for all the low luminance areas of my image and I'm starting to pull the blues. As you can see, like I hardly pulled anything. Like keep your eyes on the vector scope right here. Like I hardly introduced any blues into the image and it already looks horrible. So why do you think it looks horrible? Just look at how much yellows and reds are and only introducing just a tiny amount of blue, like literally this much, completely ruins the entire image. Why do you think that is? Obviously right here I can instantly tell that the entire environment looks extremely monochromatic is because there's so much warm light shining through this entire thing that introducing blue would not make sense. Because the one thing you cannot do is try to mix color harmonies. You cannot have a monochromatic image and also introduce complementary colors. That's just not how it works. Just look at this gradient for a second. Do you think that introducing blue in this gradient makes any sense whatsoever? So simply we're just going to disable what we just did, and as you can see, the image just feels right. I didn't show you every single step of this color grade, but basically the last step for me was to desaturate the skies because obviously during a sunrise, you do have a large portion of the sky that is still azure. However, even on the vector scope, as you can see, we have an extremely large concentrated blob that is super warm, which is basically like 90 whatever percent of the image. And then you have this extremely faded, tiny little specks of color in blue. So you can already tell by the vector scope that something is up with the blues. And obviously the best thing you can do is to desaturate them to make them look neutral. And according to color science, why do you think this works? Well, I can tell you why this works. So the reason that almost a completely gray sky still looks blue to our eyes and looks very pleasing is because scientifically our eyes actually work in opposites. Pretty much because of this image is extremely warm, our eyes are very much focused on the warm tones and they're a little bit exhausted. So they're going to, in turn, be extremely sensitive to cold colors. And what that really means is that obviously the equilibrium is white, but it starts seeing white as a lot more blue. If you didn't know, Apple actually has this digital color meter app, which is just huge help for us. You can actually just go there and just grab the hexadecimal of the color and check for yourself what color it is, okay? 92, 96, 99. So pretty much this is the color we're looking at. It's almost completely neutral gray. It's only off by just a few percent. As you can see, it has 153 blue, 146 red, and 150 green. So it's off by only like a single percent in favor of blue. But still, if you look at this image, it's almost like you're looking at something completely different. So if you're taking pictures or videos towards the sun, it's most likely going to be monochromatic, and introducing blues is not going to help you so much. So just one quick tip, desaturating blues is actually going to support this color harmony. Sometimes less is truly more. Now let's actually do the color grade from the bottom up. So this is basically the base power grade I use for myself. I developed it through many years of like struggling with colors and such. I just needed something that's good for every single use case, and this is probably it. So here we're color grading kind of a cheap drones footage, which doesn't even have a log profile. So we're working with linear gamma. We don't even need any CSTs. We can just start working right away. If you look at the parade, everything is kind of clumped together to the middle. So naturally the solution is to introduce some contrast. Now, once again, the tool does not matter. There are so many ways, so many simple and so many complicated ways to introduce contrast to your image. It truly doesn't matter how you do it. I can show you a few. So if you're a complete beginner, I think for you, it would be best to just grab the Film Look Creator tool, change the preset to a clean slate, and start introducing contrast, and basically that's it. And this looks about right. If you accidentally ended up peaking your shadows or your highlights, you have your fade and highlight slider here. There are so many amazing tools. It comes down to almost personal preference, which one helps you to create your vision the most. If you're a bit of an intermediate, you can obviously use the curves tool. This basically gives you a little bit more control over where you want to push colors and where you don't. But for the most part, they're doing the same thing. But one extremely useful tip with curves is that you cannot break the pattern. It always has to be an S curve. If I start doing things like this, as you can see, it's just gonna break the image completely. Like, you cannot do these like extremely sophisticated curves. It always has to be a perfect gradual S curve. But in my opinion, the easiest and best tool to use is the mathematically perfect contrast and pivot tool. Best tool in my opinion is the HDR global slider, because this is the only exposure tool in DaVinci Resolve that is photographically accurate. This pretty much perfectly mimics how a camera works. Now, obviously, if you're working with logos, for example, this is not the best tool for you because computer-generated imagery does not respond the same way to this tool as camera-generated ones do. So for cameras, absolutely, this is the only thing that you should use in my opinion. And as you can see, we're basically already there. It's like we're almost there completely. From this point onwards, all you should really do is go to your vector scope, look at your color harmony, try to push into the correct color harmony, and that's basically it. Like, listen, if you're educated on color science and color theory, color grading becomes such a breeze and so enjoyable. Like, once again, I would like to show you some images. Like, by the way, this was the final image. So as you can see, it's not that much different because you should never overcomplicate your color grading process. But let me show you some of the other images we have right here. This image, for example, was taken literal minutes after the one that I just showed you. However, the same rules apply, even though we're facing a completely different direction or we're shooting a different subject. It is a monochromatic color harmony. There is no space. You cannot afford to have blues in this image. You should create a pleasing, soothing, monochromatic color gradient that's smooth and uniform all across the entire image. And just find the best tools to make the subject pop, apply the correct vignette amount, apply contrast where you need to, and you're gonna end up creating beautiful images like this one. Don't overcomplicate color grading. Or look at this one, for example. This was recorded on a DJI action camera, so this obviously doesn't have the best dynamic range ever. However, it's important to keep in mind that as a colorist, your job is not to save everything, even when it's impossible. Your job is to convey an emotion. If we look at the histogram, for example, as you can see, this is not even peaking, by the way. If you stop it right before peaking, right before pure white, it is going to look absolutely pleasing and it's not going to be an issue. You just have to control it. Your job as a colorist in this case is to create extremely smooth transitions so that it looks pleasing to the eye. And even though we're facing the sunlight itself, scientifically is supposed to be almost perfectly white. Sure, the surroundings are extremely warm. Sure. However, the sunlight itself should not be. And this is how it looks correct to the eye, because let me show you what happens if you create an even warmer image than this one. As you can see, the more you go into this like super unorthodox, and many people might think, oh, this is actually creative and whatever, it just doesn't look correct and it looks completely off. This is so much more pleasing to look at than this one. And this is why I say that it is of utmost importance for every single colorist to respect color science, to respect the actual physical properties of the world, because otherwise you might end up creating images like this. So that was my quick tip for you by showcasing my thought process for color grading sunsets and sunrises. By the way, as I already said, I want to cover this entire book that I created. It's 110 pages. It has so many images, and I truly spent a lot of time color grading every single one of these to be scientifically accurate, yet still cinematic and pleasing to the eye. So basically one by one, slowly but surely, I'm gonna be going over all of them and make videos about each one. If you found this video helpful or have a question, feel free to leave a comment, and I'll see you in the next video.